to sand a wood floor. You can either refinish an existing floor, or this process will work for finishing a floor that you just nailed down. So stay tuned to this if you want to hear more about a little bit easier way to sand your floor. In the meantime, if you think this video is going to be helpful, please like it below and subscribe to our channel. If you subscribe to our channel, you will get notified when we release new videos, and you never know, that video that we release may just be the help that you need. Alrighty, let's get started and show you a little bit about this process. When I, as a contractor, have a customer who needs a floor sanded, we call in the professionals. The guys that have the big machines, they walk behind, they've got a big drum about that wide with a round belt on it that comes on the floor, and they drag it across in a crisscross pattern. Got a mouse here. Drag it across the floor in a crisscross pattern, and they do a great job of sanding down a lot of material. They get down about a 1/16 of an inch very quickly, get into fresh wood. Then they come around with an edger and clean up the edges, and they do a great job. And oftentimes they have a truck-mounted vacuum system out of the curb that sucks up like 98% of all the dust. It's a great way to go. However, it's expensive. And if you want to save money like I'm doing today, let me show you a little trick to do a little quicker way to do this. Well, it's not quicker, I'll tell you that, but a little cheaper way to do this. So what we've done is we've rented this orbital sanding machine. Now if you look online, you'll see a lot of guys that talk about how an orbital sanding machine just won't cut it, won't get the material off. Well, I'm here to tell you it will if you're patient and you keep up the process long enough. I have sanded here on our wood floor. We had some cupped boards in this floor. Now we've got it all flat using this orbital sander. I've used, starting with this heavy grit paper. This is 20 grit. I even had a 12 grit paper that I used before this. And I used a lot of it. Used about 5 or 6 sheets for a 20 by 10 room of each of these, the 20 and the 12. So be prepared for that if you actually did that. Once you get your floor down smooth, you can follow up with less passes of the finer grits. So keep that in mind, get plenty of heavy grit. Another thing we want to do is we're using wood filler. So I've got a stainable wood filler, and this wood filler is a little bit brown too. That way it kind of starts tinting the direction of the wood filler or the wood stain that I'm using. It's also stainable, so by the time it starts brown and it's stainable, I should get a pretty good match when we're done. So what I've done is I've taken the time to take the first pass through on the floor. We've got it flat, like I said. So now I'm going to show you a little bit how we do this on camera. One thing you want to do is you want to make sure you have a lot of dust protection on so that you're not breathing in the sanding particulate. Also, you might want to use ear protection as well if you need to. I'm just going to show this for a minute or two, and I won't use it right now, but I've been using it for the long sanding that I've been doing. So that's the process, and you might ask, why use the orbital sander instead of the drum sander? You can rent those drum sanders and they take off a lot of material. The reason why I don't is because they're really tricky. They take a lot of experience to use. If you think you can cut it, go for it because you'll get done a little quicker. But the good thing about the orbital sander is it's got a flat surface. So this sanding pad can run flat on the surface for a long period of time, and it won't dig in or dip or cause little grooves in your floor that you can get with a drum sander. So it's a little safer way for us kind of amateurs in this business. I'm going to show you a little bit too about an up-close look at this, and let's take a look at some of the wood grain. Okay, this is an up-close look at our wood grain. You can see here that we have a pretty flat surface. And you can see here how the filler is still left close to the spots where I filled. That means we need more sanding. We have to get this all the way down to where the wood comes together just like this, where you can see no residue. Additionally, you don't want to see any finish along the edges. How we have this area right here along the edges where I've got finish that's left behind, we have to take a few tools, and I'll show you in just a minute how we deal with that. But that's all got to be cleaned up. Finishing up my edges now with the orbital sander, and we're going to go down to our next grit on the floor machine in just a few minutes. 36 grit is our next pass over the floor. We'll do that and our 60 grit. Then I'll come back with a finer paper on my orbital sander and hit my edges with a 60 grit as well. And we're going to be getting close. Hopefully we can get some stain on yesterday. Alright, for the last several minutes, I've been making the last pass over the floor with 80 grit. Now we've got a pine floor, so 80 grit works really well for us. If you're doing oak or some other hardwood, you might want to go to 100 grit after that and make it a little bit finer than even the 80 would get it. But we're spending our time getting close as we can to the edges, but we've also gone around with our edger before this too, so I think we're in pretty good shape after we get this finished. I'll finish this pass out and then I'll show you how to stain the floor next. Alright, staining is really a two-process application. One is putting the stain on, and I'm just using an old paintbrush to do that. The other is wiping the stain off, the excess anyway. And you can let this soak in different lengths of time. I'm only giving it a couple of minutes here. I'm putting it down in a pretty heavy fashion, then giving it a couple of minutes and wiping it back off. But if you need it to be a darker or penetrate a little further, then you can leave it on a little longer. But anyway, you can watch how we do it here. Just lay it on with a brush, or you can even use an old rag and use it with put it on with a rag. You can use a foam applicator too; those work pretty well. There's a lot of ways you can get stain on. You can see it's not real important how you get it on. Just getting it on the whole board, letting it soak in evenly. When I wipe it off, I want to wipe with the direction of the grain. If you come across the grain, it may look okay, but you also might see those marks in your wood later. If your cloth marks are going in the direction of the grain, you won't notice them. Alright, that's how we do the staining process. We're going to do the whole floor, work our way out. We're going to let this dry and put our first coat down. We'll show you how to do that. Okay, we've got the whole floor stained now, and we're starting to apply our first coat of finish. What we're using today is a Minwax Ultimate Floor Finish. It's supposed to be a new water-based type finish that's really good, so we're trying it. You can use whatever type of finish you want. You can research that and figure out what's best. But I want to show you today how we're applying that. I'm using this microfiber tool that helps to smooth out the floor. What we're going to do is just pour it right on the floor, and I've already started over here, so you can hopefully pick that up on camera that we're partway done. But we'll just take a little bit and pour a puddle out on the floor. We'll kind of set this aside, and we'll take our tool and we'll just kind of spread this. Now you want to keep a little angle on your tool so that you're pushing this finish away from the existing area, which is right over here, that has the finish on it. So we're kind of angling it out, and we're going to go around, and we come turn the other way, and we come down this way, and we kind of turn this way, and bring it back. So that's the process that we follow as we go across the floor. I'm going to do a little bit of this now, and we'll catch you on the second coat. Okay, we're nearing the end of the project. We're going to put the second and final coat on this floor today, and usually you only need 2. Sometimes you can do 3 if you want. It's up to you. But a couple of things I wanted to cover before we get started is that it's a good idea not to walk on the floor in between if you can. In fact, we've kept this room super clean in between. We didn't want any dust or junk to be trapped in on the floor. But there's a couple things you can do to help with that. One is, when you do need to walk in, just wear a pair of clean white socks. Bare feet can leave like little prints, and even shoes can leave prints. So it's a good idea to avoid that. Also, the finish that we're using, one of the characteristics of it is that if you recoat it before 24 hours, they say you can go over it without sanding it, without scuffing it up. And it seems like it's adhering well. It seems like it's a good surface that it could adhere to. I'm trying this finish for the first time, so I hope it works out as well as they say on the can. But if you're using a finish where you need to screen in between, which means kind of sand it lightly with 220 grit sandpaper, then you're going to have to come in and wipe down the floor, or maybe vacuum it, maybe both. Vacuum first and wipe it down. You want to get all that dust and anything that's sitting on the floor up before you put this final coat on, because it'll just go right over and it'll cause little bumps in the finish. So I think that's it. If you have any questions or thoughts or comments about your project, include them in the comments below. We'd like to hear from you guys about how your projects are going. Hope this helps you all to bring your family home.